When it comes to SUVs, Toyota has pretty much every segment covered, from the subcompact Corolla Cross all the way up to the large three-row truck-based SUV known as the Toyota Sequoia. Now, one particular area where the company has struggled with in terms of sales has been the midsize two-row crossover segment, and that's precisely where the Toyota Venza competes. Toyota brought back this nameplate to America back in 2021 after a 7-year hiatus, and unlike its predecessor, this Venza only comes as an electrified hybrid model, of course, it being slightly larger than a Toyota RAV4. So now that this car has been on the market for a little over 2 years, it's time for Toyota to give the Venza some small updates, courtesy of a new trim level and a new infotainment system. And the big question I want answered, if you guys are in the market for a vehicle like this because you don't necessarily need the size of something like the Toyota Highlander, how does the 2023 Toyota Venza continue to stack up? Stay tuned to find out. Now, before we start talking about the exterior styling, I'm going to remind you guys what's underneath the hood. Now, unlike the previous generation Venza, which offered a choice of 2 different gas engines, Toyota makes it pretty simple with this new Venza. It's only offered with one hybrid powertrain. It's the same excellent unit out of the Toyota RAV4 hybrid. Now, if you guys are familiar with Toyota's latest crop of products, they are going all in on electrified vehicles, more specifically hybrids, and of course, eventually battery electric vehicles. But this powertrain is an excellent one. It combines the company's 2.5-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder, their dynamic force engine that runs on the Atkinson cycle that has direct injection, with 2 electric motors up front and then a separate 3rd electric motor at the rear, giving this vehicle standard all-wheel drive. The gas engine on its own makes around 176 horsepower and 163 pound-feet of torque. When you combine the output of the electric motors, you get a total of 219 horsepower. This vehicle does have roughly a 1 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery pack, so it's a very small battery. This is not the same plug-in hybrid powertrain that you find in a RAV4 Prime, so there's no electric-only range, although it can drive this vehicle alone on electric power at very low speeds. Now, fuel economy is rated at 40 in the city, 37 on the highway. That's about 1 mpg less versus the RAV4 hybrid. And I suspect that has to do with the fact that this vehicle weighs a little bit more. It all goes out through an eCVT, an electronically controlled CVT transmission. And like I said earlier, all-wheel drive is standard. Now, unlike the RAV4, the Venza, unfortunately, is not rated to tow. The RAV4 can tow like 1,750 pounds, so keep that in mind if you guys do need to tow. In terms of 0 to 60 performance, Toyota doesn't quote that. I've never actually 0 to 60 tested a Venza, but we'll do that later on in the video. It has a top speed of roughly 118 miles an hour, and as this vehicle sits, it weighs in at just over 3,900 pounds, so about 100 pounds heavier versus a RAV4. But let's go ahead and talk about the exterior styling, which this vehicle got no changes for 2023, although there is a new nightshade trim level that basically is an XLE with blacked out accents. So this one model here being the Limited, painted in blueprint. This is the top of the line model. It's very luxury oriented. And I have to say, when this car first came out, I thought the styling was a little bit funky, a little bit strange, and very un-Toyota-like. In fact, it has looks and hints of Jaguar and Lexus in the design. And you can see here this Limited model has its own kind of unique finish to the grille. A lot of chrome accents. There's the blue accented Toyota logo, which they're technically going away with that on their newer models because they have a new Beyond Zero badge. There's also a front camera system for the 360 camera. And then if you guys go for an XLE and up trim, you'll have the upgraded full LED headlights, which include an LED daytime running light, LED turn signals, LED low and high beams. Toyota added LED fog lights, I believe, back in 2022. Previously, 2021 Venzas had kind of just a black area there where there was no fog light. There are some fake vents over here, functional vents over here with active grille shutters. And overall, I definitely think the styling of the Venza is interesting. I don't particularly like the look of the car. Some of you may disagree with me on that, of course. Styling is always subjective. But personally, I don't think this car's styling has aged very well, although it only really looks like that from certain angles. Now, looking around the side profile, you can see this is built on the same TNGA-K architecture as the RAV4. In fact, this car is known as the Toyota Harrier in other markets. So again, it's a different car. However, if you guys are looking at the dimensions, for a midsize SUV, this is where I think the Venza has a little bit of a problem because it rides on the same 105.6-inch wheelbase as the RAV4. Its overall length is 186.6, so it's about 6 inches longer than a RAV4. about 3 inches longer than the Lexus NX, again, the same vehicle on the same platform. However, compared to the first-gen Venza, this is about 2.5 inches shorter overall. So it's a mid-size crossover, but it doesn't really have the kind of proportions that you expect a mid-size crossover to have, like a Subaru Outback or a Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport. You can see the Limited includes these kind of sparkly silver 19-inch wheels, wrapped in a 225/55 R19 tire. The Nightshade Edition basically will black out these wheels. This kind of has like a super chrome appearance to it. You can see the suspension is all independent. This car has roughly about 8 inches of ground clearance. So again, decent ground clearance considering the fact that this is not an off-road oriented SUV. Now you can see the side mirrors have this nice integrated turn signal. There's chrome along the window trim, full 360 camera, and then my tester has the panoramic glass roof. This is actually the Star View Gaze roof that has an electrochromatic part that you can frost and defrost at the push of a button. And then looking at the profile here, again, you can see a lot of Jaguar in the design, although this car to me doesn't look wide enough. It's a little bit of a narrow profile car, although they did lower the roof line compared to a RAV4. But looking at the rear here, you can see very distinctive design where you have these full LED light blade tail lights. You can see the turn signals are mounted very low down there in the bumper along with the reverse light. It is an LED. There are some dual chrome exhaust tips, which my tester also has the activity mount, which is an accessory where you can mount like a bike rack, for example, there. However, there is no tow hook for this car because remember, it's not rated to tow. And then in terms of the cargo capacity, this is where the Venza also gives up space compared to the RAV4, which is technically the smaller vehicle, and that's because this car has a more sleeker shape to it. With the second row seats up, this is only a 2-row vehicle. You get around 28.8 cubic feet of storage, which is fine. It's perfectly acceptable. However, you are noticing that this load floor is significantly higher versus a RAV. The roof line also isn't as high, so you can't pack stuff up to the roof like you can in a RAV4. And then if you look underneath the floor here, you can see there is a temporary spare tire with a pretty deep well, actually. There's a good amount of extra space you can put down there. Now, if you want to fold down these second row seats, there's no release lever back here. You have to actually go over here and kind of push the seat forward, but you can see with the seat up, which it doesn't, or with the seat down, it doesn't fold completely flat, it's mostly flat. You get a total of 55 cubic feet of total storage space. Now 55 is fine, however the RAV offers a total of 69 cubic feet of space. So again, it's a reduction of 15 cubic feet, and then if you guys are looking at the Lexus NX, that has roughly 47 cubic feet. So this has more than the Lexus, but again, less than the RAV, and I think that's where some people have an issue with the Venza, is because if you're going to buy a bigger vehicle, you expect it to have more cargo space, and it sadly does not. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the interior of this 2023 Venza. However, before we get inside, I want to show you guys the key fob for the vehicle. You can see this is Toyota's latest intelligent access key. It's got the usual lock, unlock, open up the trunk, and panic button. And this vehicle also has remote start from the fob. A lot of you have been letting me know that if you just basically do, if you double tap or triple hit the lock button, so you go lock, lock, and then hold this button here, the car beeped again, and it should remote start the vehicle. Although I did find it's a little bit finicky. If you guys also have access to your Toyota smartphone app, you should be able to also lock and unlock this car from your smartphone, which is definitely nice. Now opening up the door, you can see my tester has a really nice color combination. This is known as the Boulder Gray Soft Tech. So this is not real leather, it's their faux leather, their synthetic leather, but you can see it has a nice look to it. I love the copper accented stitching over here. These seats are also heated and ventilated, and for a fake leather, they feel really nice. They feel really soft and high quality. You also have a 12-way powered driver's seat here with 4-way lumbar. This also includes 2-person memory on the driver's side. The passenger seat is also an 8-way power, which is definitely nice. I also love the fact that this steering wheel here is a power tilt and telescoping. Wasn't expecting to find that. That's typically something you find in luxury brands. Now looking at the door panel here, you can see, unlike the RAV4, the Venza has really nice high quality materials. Soft touch leather with genuine stitching along this entire upper portion of the door handle or the door pad. The armrest pad here along the door panel could be a little bit softer, but I love the aluminum trim, the aluminum look trim for the door handles. This wood, it looks good, however, when you touch it, you can tell it's obviously fake. Down here, you can see it's hard touch plastic. You have a little bit of storage here, and then my tester has the 11-speaker JBL sound, which also sounds pretty good. Now, getting inside the Venza, it has a nice, easy step-in height from that 8 inches of ground clearance. And as I shut the door has a relatively solid sounding thunk. Remember, this is built on the same platform as the RAV4. Now, starting the vehicle up, you can see the button to fire up the engine is right here. And because it's a hybrid, it doesn't have the traditional start-stop noise. It just kind of whirs to life, and it says ready in the instrument panel. That's how you know. And then in terms of the rest of the interior, you can see, like I mentioned earlier, power tilt and telescoping steering wheel. This is the same steering wheel on the RAV4. No paddles on the wheel. That reminds you, again, the Venza is not designed to be a sportier vehicle. The horn sounds good. It sounds pretty appropriate given the size of this car. And then in terms of the rest of the interior, you can see this area here has more stitching down here along this portion, along with this area here. This part of the dash right here is slightly padded, although it has a soft touch and great injection molded plastic area. This over here, where you probably won't touch, is a hard touch plastic, but overall, it's definitely an improvement over the RAV. I especially like the 12.3-inch display, which this was included on the pre-refresh models. However, it was restricted to the limited trim. Now you can get it on the XLE as standard, and then you can see here this has their latest Toyota audio multimedia interface system, which you can see the CarPlay is really quick and snappy and responsive. The screen is a good size. It's relatively easy to use. And you can see Toyota has redesigned the center stack here. We now have volume buttons as opposed to the little touch-sensitive pad that was along the side here, and it had like another level of touch-sensitive buttons. Now you can see it's all been moved to the screen, so Toyota kind of cleaned up this area here, but you still have a lot of touch-sensitive buttons for those of you who don't like that. Now over here in the instrument panel, you can see it's got an all-digital display, which I believe looks great. You can actually customize the look of this display as well. If you guys go into the settings, you can change the way the gauges look. If I push and hold that, you can see you can also adjust what this looks like over here. Going over to the settings, going over here to meter settings, this will allow you to change what the gauge cluster looks like. If you go here to meter style, you can see I have it in sporty. There's a tough look, which kind of gives you the look of like gear knobs. There's a smart look, which is like kind of like a blue look. And then there's casual, which is just, again, very simple. So I particularly like the sporty look. But I just love how Toyota gives you this kind of display, which is customizable. I think that's a really great addition. You can also get this on the RAV4, but you cannot get this on the Lexus NX, which is interesting. Now down here you can see wireless phone charging pad is here. You have this kind of more of that fake wood along the inner portion here. You have real stitching over here on the center console, which is nice. Your drive mode selector is here. You can see there's 3 modes. There's a sport, normal, and an eco mode. And it shows you a little graphic of the modes changing. When I put the vehicle into reverse, you can see there's your full top-down 360 camera that is included on this high trim. And again, it offers trajectory, cross-traffic alert. The graphics are also much better versus the previous system. You can see over here, my tester also has the digital camera rearview mirror, which you can go to a standard mirror if you'd like, which I really like that view because it gives you more visibility. Down here, you can see more leather stitching along the center console. You have heated and cooled seats, which I love how they're actually actual buttons over here. You have a padded armrest, more of that fake wood, and then underneath here, you can see a little bit of storage over there, although it is not quite as big as some competitors. You have 2 USB-C charging ports back there, which is nice. And then if you look at the glove box, you can see it is damped but not lined with felt. It's a bin style. It's a pretty good size. And then if you look above me here, you can see my tester has the glass roof. This doesn't open unlike the RAV. However, if you push this little button right here, you can see it actually will frost and defrost itself, which is pretty cool. This is typically reserved for really high-end expensive cars. You can't even get this on any other Toyota product, but I really like how it's included on the Venza. I just wish this sunroof opened. It didn't actually open. You have a little power retractable shade if you want to close that. But if you want an opening roof, that's where you have to buy the Lexus or the RAV4. So overall, the interior of the front seat area is nice. The heads-up display also is good. It feels comfortable. It has enough space, and it has really great technology, and it definitely feels more luxury than the RAV. I'm just not sure that this feels quite as nice as the new Lexus NX, which again, I expected that considering the price of this car. Now, hopping into the back seat, let's take a look at the space back here, because the Venza is a bigger vehicle than the RAV. However, you have the same 37.8 inches of legroom, which is decent, but not as much as what you'll find in something like the Outback or Atlas Cross Sport. You can see these seats do recline. They also fold down, which gives you a nearly flat floor into the cargo area. But getting back here, you can see the space for somebody like me is perfectly acceptable. This is where I'd have the vehicle to drive, the front seat to drive. For somebody 5'7", the space is fine. Not a completely flat floor in the middle here, which is going to intrude on the middle passenger, but you do have rear seat air vents, which is nice. You have 2 USB-C charging ports down there. Surprisingly, no heated rear seats. That's something I would have expected to find, but you have nice materials in the back, which is good. You have 2 storage cubbies, and then if you want to fold this area down here, you have an armrest with 2 cup holders. So overall, the back seat is certainly sufficient for most people, but again, if you want more space, you're going to have to look at the competitors like the Outback or the Subaru or the Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport. So here we are back in the Toyota Venza. It's kind of crazy to think that Toyota revealed this car to the world nearly 3 years ago, right at the start of the pandemic. And it was kind of surprising that Toyota brought back the Venza nameplate. So after a couple of years on the market, where does the Venza continue to sit within its segment? Now, this particular one that I'm driving is the limited trim. It's the top of the line model. There's a new Nightshade edition that I wish I kind of was able to show you guys that, but it's basically an XLE with a bunch of black accents. But regardless of that, the Venza continues to be offered only with Toyota's excellent hybrid system. It's the same powertrain that's in the RAV4. It's got a 2.5-liter four-cylinder, 3 electric motors, including a separate one at the rear, giving this thing all-wheel drive. And we have around 219 horsepower, which is perfectly acceptable. It's not a crazy amount of power, but it's a good amount for what this car is made for. But let's go ahead and test out what we can get 0 to 60 in this vehicle. Remember, it's got an eCVT. And on this same road as all the other vehicles I've tested, I got 6.94 seconds. Now, interestingly enough, that actually is a smidge slower, like 0.1 seconds slower than the last 2023 RAV4 that I tested along that same stretch, which was the Woodland edition with the off-road oriented tires. A Lexus NX 350h, which also is built on this platform, also does it in 6.9 seconds. So very consistent performance for this powertrain, which, to be honest, it's got enough power for most. I mean, Toyota offers a more powerful version than Lexus, but I'm kind of wondering where that extra 20 horsepower goes. Although the Lexus is around 100 pounds heavier than this car, I'm not entirely sure 20 horsepower would make that big of a difference. But let's go ahead and try it again here. We'll floor it, brake torque it. It feels strong off the line. 7.6 seconds there. Now that time, I think, is perfectly acceptable. This is with it more going slightly uphill versus back there where it was going more on level surface. So in the real world, you're gonna be doing around 7 seconds 0 to 60 in this car, which is, again, perfectly acceptable performance. Now, in terms of the rest of the driving dynamics, you can tell that Toyota went with a much more luxury, comfort-oriented theme. I mean, the fact that Toyota doesn't offer an SE or an XSE trim on the Venza will tell you that. And in terms of how does it feel compared to a RAV4, I mean, the Venza drives exactly like that vehicle. If you guys have driven a RAV4, you'll get into this car. You'll notice that the interior doesn't have quite as much of an open, airy feel because the roof line's a little bit lower. But in terms of the steering, it's light, it's precise, but it's very numb. It doesn't have any feedback. The suspension tuning is also very soft, so you have plenty of body lean. But in terms of the ride quality, I find the ride quality to be comfortable. Although the 19s do, transmit some more bumps than I guess the buyer that's in this pool would go for. I mean, I think the Venza appeals to a more older buyer, someone like an empty nester who wants kind of that Lexus luxury, but you don't necessarily want to pay that Lexus luxury, because if you want the Lexus NX, it's going to cost you around $10,000 more than this car. And there are some people out there that won't pay up for that, for the Lexus badge. Now, granted, the Lexus does come with a few extra goodies and a little bit of a nicer interior and a little bit more sound deadening, I believe, than this car. This car is quiet, but there are times where I felt that it's a little loud. I'll put the drive mode back into normal. We'll just accelerate normally here. So this is probably how any normal person would accelerate, up to around 40 miles an hour, 45 miles an hour. You do hear that four-cylinder. It is a little bit on the loud side. There are competitors that have quieter engines, internal combustion engines, but the one thing Toyota gets right is, put my foot down here, it's very seamless. It's a very quick transition between electric to gas. That eCVT just switches the power very nicely, and it's just smooth, aside from the fact that the engine's a little bit buzzy. But once it's driving, for example, now the engine is off, it's cruising along in EV mode with the engine off, it's very quiet in here at that point. You feel like you're getting a sense that you're driving an electrified car, and it's kind of cool to see, the charge meter going to go back and give you energy back into it's capturing the energy from the brakes, putting it back into the battery. Remember, this battery is very small, about 1 kilowatt hour, so it doesn't offer any electric-only range. It can, accelerate very, very slowly on electric power alone, basically only at crawling speeds or at parking lot speeds or in bumper-to-bumper traffic. Anytime my foot goes past, like, like half or quarter throttle, it's going to start up that gas engine to give you that power that you need to get up to speed. Now, in terms of the handling there, again, very, very competent, but not very engaging, which, you know, there are vehicles in this segment that are going to be more engaging, but the Venza is fine. My confusion with the Venza is just like how, you know, who's going to buy this car? I mean, Toyota sold roughly 150,000 RAV4 hybrids in the US last year. Lexus did about 50,000 NXs, and Toyota only did around 39,000 Venzas, or 34,000 Venzas. It is about half the sales versus what they did back in 2021 when this car first came out. It had their best year ever at 61,000 sales. But overall, the Venza is still a really great option, and in terms of efficiency, this is the same powertrain that's in the RAV4. So in that vehicle, I got around 36 miles to the gallon in the Woodland Edition. This car has been roughly doing about the same. This is about 1 mpg less efficient versus the regular RAV4 hybrid, which I was surprised by. But for those of you who drive a little bit more conservatively, you're going to get even better gas mileage than me. This is going to get one of the best MPGs in the segment. Combine that with like a 14 gallon gas tank, you're looking at around 450 to 500 miles on a full tank, which is excellent. But again, the RAV4 hybrid is also excellent. The seats in this vehicle also are comfortable. I can see out of the car relatively well. I do love that digital camera rearview mirror. It's only included on the top trims of the Venza. But the Softex seats are also comfortable and supportive. They don't really have much in terms of lateral grip in terms of cornering, but that's okay. It's not what you buy this car for. The driver assistance tech also, this is Toyota's Safety Sense 2.5. It works pretty well. It does a decent job of keeping you in the center in the lane. It also has full speed range adaptive cruise control. But overall, I still like the Venza. I'm not sure I'm sold on the styling of the car. It had very weird, controversial styling when it first came out. I still kind of feel that way now. I don't know. I don't particularly think it's aging very well. But again, I'm kind of confused whether, you know, the better buy is the RAV4 Limited or this Venza Limited, because the Venza at this price point, it's only about $2,000 more expensive than the RAV, which is kind of a good deal. But remember, you're also getting a vehicle that is slightly less practical because of the shape of this car. So after spending a week with the 2023 Toyota Venza, all the qualities that I drove in the 2021 model are readily apparent in this vehicle. And I also like the fact that Toyota has made updates to the infotainment system. That new 12.3-inch display with their latest software is a huge upgrade. And I also like the new fully digital 12.3-inch display in the instrument panel. That's something that you cannot even get in the Lexus cousin to this vehicle, and that car is significantly more expensive when you get them fully loaded, comparably equipped. Now, speaking of which, if you guys are interested in the Venza, I still think this is a really nice addition in Toyota's lineup. It has all of the qualities about the Toyota RAV4 that make it such a nice vehicle. However, what you do have to deal with is the fact that this is a larger car that doesn't have more interior space. And I think that's what's going to constantly hold the Venza back in terms of sales. I also think the styling of the car, while it is definitely different, to me, in my eyes, it appeals more to an older buyer. I suspect younger families are going to continue to buy the RAV4 or buy the Highlander. And then if you want something like the Lexus, you're just going to go ahead and make that leap to the Lexus. Because in terms of sales, the Venza sales were very strong initially back in 2021. The company moved around 61,000 units. However, last year, they only did around half that sales, which is interesting. I have no idea how much of it has to do with the fact that Toyota was dealing with production constraints due to the pandemic and supply chain issues. But you should know that compared to the Lexus NX, they did around 50,000 units, while this car here did around 35,000 units. So it's kind of surprising to me to see that the less expensive car that also feels a little bit Lexus-like did less sales in the US compared to the actual Lexus product. Now, speaking of which, this car is still a really practical car. It has, as you guys saw in the video, decent acceleration from the hybrid system, also very good fuel economy, especially for those of you who plan to take long road trips. You can easily do around 500 miles on a full tank. And in terms of handling dynamics, the Venza obviously is not the sporty option, but it is more of the comfort-oriented option, which I think is more important in this segment. But really what I feel holds the Venza back from being a top seller in the segment is the fact that it doesn't have more interior space, because this car competes with vehicles like the two-row Jeep Grand Cherokee, the Ford Edge, the Subaru Outback, the Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport, the Hyundai Santa Fe. A lot of those vehicles outsell the Venza by a significant margin, but if you guys are looking for the efficiency leader and the value leader, this is where the Venza is going to, again, have a lot of cards playing for it, because this is excellent in those categories. Now, if you guys are interested in purchasing the Venza because it doesn't matter to you that this car has less interior space than most of its rivals, this car starts at around $34,000 for the base LE. Remember, all-wheel drive is going to be standard. That's about $3,500 more versus a RAV4 hybrid. I do think that that is a reasonable amount of money extra compared to the Toyota RAV4 because this has a nicer interior. Most buyers are going to go for the XLE trim. That's around $38,000. This Limited starts at around $42,000. Add the $1,400 for the Starview panoramic glass roof that my tester has, and we're looking at an as-tested price of $45,000 right on the nose, including destination. Now, 45 grand makes this about 2 grand more versus a comparably equipped Toyota RAV4 Hybrid Limited. That's around $43,000. Compared to that, the Venza has a larger infotainment display. It has, and it also has a heads-up display along with a slightly nicer feeling interior. For those of you who want that, it could be worth the extra charge, but keep in mind, again, the RAV4 Hybrid is the more practical car. But with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on this 2023 Toyota Venza Limited. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.